sea lions. The research that you're about to see began in May of 1981 at the Ecological Field Station at California State University, Haywood. And it now continues, this research continues in 1987 at the Long Marine Laboratory at UC, University of California, Santa Cruz. The major performer in this tape are the trainers and, of course, California sea lion Rocky, as well as California sea lion Gertie. What you're seeing now is the controlled procedure for collecting baseline data. The trainer stations Rocky on her foot before a trial begins. She generally doesn't know where the objects are. That's white disc over. Rocky found the white disc and she porpoises over it. One individual is putting the objects, positioning the objects in the tank. Other individuals are collecting data by videotaping and taking notes and filling out protocol sheets. Rocky's stationed now. She has a gestural cue white, small, football. She finds the white small football and she's sent out to fetch it. And now she brings in the white small football. And you can see some of the objects include a large white football, a small black football, a black pipe, a white disc, black car, etc. Some 9 or 10 objects. Small, black, football, tail. And she performs it correctly. Rocky currently has a repertoire of 24 gestural signs. There are 3 major types of signs. Those standing for actions, those standing for objects, and those that modify the objects in terms of the properties of the objects. By placing these signs in sequence, with modifiers preceding objects and actions following objects, the signs can be combined and recombined so that Rocky can perform approximately 7,000 different instructions. That is, she can comprehend over 7,000 different instructions. And these instructions can be as long as 7 signs in length.
Okay.
The next controlled trial coming up is pipe, and she's now can't find the pipe. She's swimming out and she finally sees that it is a pipe, and she goes out and performs the action, which is fetch. That's a 2-sign sequence, pipe, fetch, and she does it perfectly. Now, the way we train these actions was to use a variety of different objects, and we shaped up the actions using a series of successive approximations, and then we acquired control over those actions with a hand gesture. The first action was fetch, and so Rocky had to fetch an object in, bring it to the trainer. In this tape, we're simulating the original training of these actions. The second action that was trained was flipper touch. And we got her to flipper touch objects, and then we acquired gestural control over the flipper touch of a wide variety of objects. Now, the objects were not named at this point. And we used objects that had their own dyes, like red balls or red bats or yellow balls and so on. Now, in order to get Rocky to associate a gesture with an object, we signed it and she oriented to it, and then we gave her a condition reinforced whistle. As you just saw, she oriented to the ball. Now, that was pipe. And she orients, and she's immediately given a whistle. The next thing we had to do was integrate the object sign along with the action sign. Pipe, flipper. Only two objects at the same time. Ball, flipper. Pipe, fetch. Note that Rocky is still orienting after the gestural sign for the object. She returns to station, receives the action sign, and then performs it. That was ball mouth. By pairing novel signs with novel objects, we were able to introduce new objects, and she would learn them immediately, or make the association of the gesture to the object. Here we have ring, fetch. These were the old actions, and now this is a new object, ring, and it's paired with an old object. So we believe she uses an exclusion principle. New gesture goes with new object, and that's an old action. So ring, flipper touch. Again, just two objects in the pool with her at this point. Ball, that's an old object, flipper touch. And that's paired with the ring. The ring was the third of the objects that she learned. Now, she was taught very quickly to fetch in objects, and here you see her fetching in objects so that the trainer can have these objects. And the next object that was introduced was water wings, and here's the novel sign, the new sign, water wings. She finds it, and then she's given one of the old actions, in this case, flipper touch. Now, the major point here is that she immediately associates the novel gesture with the novel object. That gesture is associated immediately with water wings, and then the action's included, and she fetches the water wings to the signaler. To ensure that she paid attention to the action sign and didn't leave too soon, we gave her no-go trials in which the sign was given for the object and then the action, and if she held, she was reinforced, if she held at station. Now, we added new actions by just putting in an object and training successive approximations of that action, and then getting control over that action with a gestural signal, as you see here. This is the action over. So, porpoise over the bat, porpoise over the pipe, porpoise over the ball, no matter what the object is. So she would generalize to any object. Now we go to more than two alternatives, and she's able to do that. There are 4 objects in the tank, and Clorox bottle was a new object and a new sign. So a novel sign goes with the novel object, even if there are more than 2 objects in the tank. This took quite a while for training. So that was Clorox fetch. Clorox, that's suggested for Clorox. She turns, orients on the Clorox, and she goes out and flipper touches, which is what she was signed to do. Water wings, which was previously in her repertoire at this stage, and she finds the water wings and she porpoises over. Now, to modify a training, initially consisted of black-white, And here we ran into some difficulties. She had to learn this by trial and error only. So this is a sign for black, ball, flipper touch. Now we've gone to 3 signs. Modifier preceding the object. Now this will be white, Clorox, fetch. And after about 6 weeks, she had this down pat. It's interesting that we started with a red bat, and when we signed black bat, black and red to her are the same because sea lions are essentially colorblind. And this is a very good test for that, I think. And when we signed white bat, she had a much more difficult time until she learned to associate white with the white object. So at this point, she had 3 sign sequences: modifier plus object plus action. The modifiers included black and white, and then she was taught gray. Soon afterwards, we decided to teach her large and small, and we took advantage of the fact that sea lions respond to odd objects, or in this case, odd-sized objects. So we paired a small object with 2 larger objects: small, football, over. And that's the odd object. The small object is odd relative to the other sized objects. Here it would be the large object which is odd, and it would be the odd large football, which would be paired with the small football and a small round ball. And she would immediately orient to the football that was large, and therefore immediately learn to go to the large football and the small football, and then the large round ball and the small round ball. In this case, the small round ball is paired with the large round ball and the large football. Here, the large round ball is paired with the small football and the small round ball, and she would just signal to go to the large ball. And then we put the large and small footballs together with other large and small objects, and she showed immediate transfer. This is large Clorox under. So now she had 3 sign sentences which included a size modifier. This is small Clorox bottle, fetch. And as you see, there's a large one, and there are also footballs, large ball, mouth. And she goes over the large ball relative to the small ball. And there are also large and small cubes now. She generalized very quickly to those. Small cube, under. Now, we got to double modifiers immediately. We were able to combine the size with the brightness or the color. Large, white, ball. So when there are 4 balls in there, she goes to the one that is both large and white, and ignores the small white one, or at least doesn't perform an action to that, nor the large black one, nor the small black one. White, large, ball. Now you can change the modifiers, that is, you can transpose and have the bright sign second and the size sign first. It doesn't make any difference. Large, black, cube. So that size can come first and color can come second, or color can come first and size can come second. Now, the missing object experiment is quite interesting because you could sign an object, and if the object's not there, she would stay at station. She would balk. She would refuse to perform the action that she was requested to perform. Black, small, Clorox, and she makes a comparison there, and she puts her tail on the black small Clorox.
Try to move these quickly. Ready? Ring over. Okay.
Ring
Okay.
over. And she finally finds the ring after a long search, two-word or two-sign sequence, and over she goes on the ring.
Cube. Fetch. Okay.
Cube, and there is no cube, so this is a missing object trial. Fetch, and she balks. She stays at station.
Bat. Okay.
Bat,
Okay.
over. There's no bat there, so just stays at station, takes a little swim. Now occasionally she would prospect, that is, she would go so far and look so long that she would finally perform the action. There is no car on this trial. She just keeps searching for the car. Thinks she sees it, gets a little confused. Some objects look like other objects. Restations, now she's not too sure, goes back out again to perform the action on an object that's not there. And now she knows it's not there, and now she performs a perfunctory action on any object, in this case, the cube. Size transposition is very, very interesting. The standard size ball is signed, and this is a standard size large ball, and she has a flipper action to that. And we have that's paired with the standard size small ball. Small ball, she finds it, and there's a relatively short latency there, time with which it takes her to find the object and then restation. Now, what's interesting here is you can perform an experiment in which you take out the standard size small ball and replace it with a giant ball. You say large ball, whatever action, flipper touch. And she now goes to the gigantic ball and immediately transfers to the gigantic ball, that is, transposes to the gigantic ball. When you say small ball, she starts to look for the absolutely small ball, can't find it, and then shifts over, shifts her criterion from small ball to smaller ball, which was the standard large ball. There are two major kinds of rules that the animal uses. One is to perform a direct action on an object, and another is to take one object over to another, that is a relational sequence. And this was how she was trained to do the relational sequence. As you can see, she was prompted, and she was signed 2 times. This is 2-cube ring. The cube is first signed, and then the animal goes to the ring and brings it to the cube. And the cube was prompted by a targeting device. The targeting device had been strongly associated with food. Now she's given a novel sentence or novel sequence: 2 black car, small black cube, fetch, which is a 6-sign sequence. And despite the fact that she may not have performed it before, she performs it perfectly. Now, we introduced non-transportable objects because all the objects in the pool were transportable. We had objects that were fixed to the edge of the tank. And this sentence is 2-person ring fetch. Person is signed first, ring is signed second. She takes the second signed object over to the first signed object and performs the task perfectly. Water, which is water jetted from a hose on the deck, tail touch. A nice illustration of the sea lions responding to the whole object is shown here. When she was trained to respond to person, she was trained to respond just to the foot of the person. But she will respond to the hand the very, very first time that the hand is placed in the water. She'll also respond to the person not only on the edge of the tank, but also in the water, the first time that the person would go into the water. And in this situation, the person is gradually getting into the water, which was how this was trained. And finally, the person was in the water floating, and Rocky is instructed to porpoise over the person. And she porpoised over the person, whether the arms are outstretched or the arms are by its side, the person's side. Person tail touch, or if the person is vertical in the water. Person to person, large cone fetch. And so Rocky brings the large cone over to the person. Now, normally Rocky fetches or brings objects in after a trial. In this case, she's trying to bring the person in as she would bring in any other object. And we've taken advantage of that and actually said, as you'll see in a moment, person fetch, which means now, as a regular sequence, two-sign sequence, bring the person back to the signaler. Person fetch. And she's taking the person now back to the signaler, or as close as she can get. The latest behaviors that we've trained in this artificial language are yes, no. First we trained no, and that was simply trained by taking advantage of her balks. And we just added a sign which we call a question mark. And then we introduced a yes paddle as well as a no paddle. Let's see how this works now. Black, small cone, and there is one there. Flipper touch goes over to the black, small cone. White, water wings, fetch. Finds the white water wings and brings it to the signaler. Now, we know the white water wings is there, and she knows it's there. Now, white water wings is going to be given the sign for white water wings, white water wings. She knows it's there, restations, and she's given the sign for question. That's a signal that gets her to press the right-hand paddle, which is the yes paddle. Clorox, and there is no Clorox. Question. No, there is no Clorox. Now, Sea Lion Gertie has a different language, different aspects to this language. She's shown an object, and that object may stand for the same type of object, or it may stand for a different object. In this case, she's being shown a ring, and then she's told to perform an action. That's ring over. And in this case, it's a black ring, because you can see there's a white ring in the tank. She also responds to objects that are on land. Now, one of the experimenters is handing her a black ring, and this is a relational situation. So the black ring is the goal item, and the white ring is the transport item. She's looking around, and she finds the black ring and brings the white ring to the black ring. Notice that the object can be shown in any orientation. Doesn't make any difference. So this is cone, tail touch. And she finds the cone on the deck and puts her tail on it. This is cube, flipper touch. Looks around, sees the cube is on the deck, and she flipper touches it. Bat, tail touch. Goes over to the bat and puts her backside on it. And she doesn't get a condition reinforcer, so she keeps going after it. Now she has signs for black person as well as white person. And the black boot stands for the black person. Black person tail touch. She's looking around, spies the black person, and she puts her backside onto the black person. White person tail touch.
Slow down.
Looks around, finds the white person, and puts her tail or backside onto the white person. And of course there are other objects that are alternatives in this situation. Cube and bat and so on. Black person, flipper. And she knows where the black person is now because that person stayed in the same position, so that's pretty easy for her to perform. Black person, tail, different action this time. Note that the person has moved somewhat and she still tells the whole person, just as Rocky. Now this is two-person cube fetch, and she follows the cube going over to the boot, which stands for the person. She takes the cube, picks it up, and drops it over at the black person. White person, over. Now where is the white person? The person has their feet in the tank, and she goes over the person's feet in the tank. Ring, flipper. She searches around, finds the ring on the deck, and flippers the ring. And the final trial in this videotape, cone, fetch. Finds the cone on the deck. Notice the cone is considerably larger than the one she's shown, doesn't make any difference. And she brings the cone over to the signaler.
End of session, end of soup.
That's good. This will be cone, tail,
Ready?
head, head. We'll have a break on the cone. Okay. R, fetch.
Ready?
Okay. Okay. Okay, have to bring those in. The disc over.
Ready?
Okay. Okay.
Ready?
Ring. Now.
Ready.
Okay. Okay.